Cutting from the net, upstairs, Bardown, goal. That was
What's up and welcome back to Bardown Talking Hockey, episode number 165, presented by the Barroom Network. It is the home of the greatest league in the world, the National Hockey League. My name is Vinnie Parisi, and I am super annoyed that we're about to start the dry season of the NHL calendar, and that really sucks. And this right here, this is Frankie Mueller, and he's here to remind me that college football starts in like 6 Sundays. So, who the hell cares? We got greatness in our life. Frank, how you doing?
That's crazy that football starts in 6 weeks.
I don't think it's exactly 6 weeks. I think I'm underselling it. It's probably more like 8 or 9.
Definitely August, though, right? Isn't week 0 in August?
I think week 0 is in August. We're getting there. We're getting there. We got to get through this hellhole known as July.
I like July.
Well, your birthday's in July, so it's not all that much of a hellhole. My least favorite months of the sports calendar are July and August, and some of my favorite people in the world have birthdays in July and August.
Including Connor Bedard.
Yeah, including Connor Bedard. That's exactly the first person that came to my mind when I was talking about birthdays in July and August. Frank, we started a little late today. Why?
VP was at the development camp for the Chicago.
We were at development camp. We were at development camp at Fifth Third Bank Arena in Chicago, Illinois. I will tell everyone all about it as we move along. But Frank, we have a little bit more important business to get to, and we will get to said business in period number 1. Welcome to period 1. Frank, the 2024 NHL draft is in the books. The first overall pick was Boston University's Macklin Celebrini. He goes to the San Jose Sharks. Duh.
Yeah, to no one's surprise, San Jose Sharks select Macklin Celebrini out of Boston University with their first ever number 1 pick in franchise history. This kid is going to be special. The Sharks did make some free agent signings since July 1st, so that at least Celebrini will have some veterans to play with. They added Toffoli, Wenberg, both to multi-year deals. They also had the 11th overall pick in the draft where they selected Sam Dickinson, a great defenseman. So out of all the teams in the NHL, this Sharks team probably has the biggest uphill climb over the next handful of years over anyone. But the acquisition of Macklin Celebrini should help them a lot as long as they could have successfully build the right pieces around them. The Sharks have a very interesting farm system cooking right now with everyone they've added this year. Plus, you got Will Smith, Shakir Mohammedoulin, Quentin Musty. So it'll be interesting to see how Macklin Celebrini fits in with these prospects and brings them all together over the course of the next few years.
Frank, I couldn't agree more. I like your analysis talking about Dickinson and how they ended up taking him 11th overall. Great move by the Sharks. They made that trade with Buffalo. What's up, Skokes? Right before the draft to be in that 11th overall pick spot. I agree with you. They have the largest hill to overcome now because they've probably overall in the last 3 years, if you combine every team's record, I would assume they have the worst one, maybe second worst, third worst, right there with Anaheim, Columbus, and Chicago. I love this draft for them. Celebrini's unreal. We watched him play. I watched at least one period of every BU game, pretty much. Mm-hmm. There were probably a couple Saturdays here and there that I might have missed one, but mostly on Friday when there's, 3 NHL games a Friday night? Usually. Yeah. I mostly flip to BU. And, it's always fun to BU. And I enjoyed watching Celebrini. He's going to probably sign with the San Jose Sharks, right? He hasn't yet, but it's probably going to end up being the case. And which something about that came up in development camp today. I'll get to that in a little bit with his buddy Ryan Green, who also plays for Boston University. But you got to think the Sharks now. You look at their young core that they've put together in the last. You can't even call them young core because they haven't proven to be a part of the core long term. Even Celebrini, you got to prove you're part of the core. But I saw a video today. They're in development camp, and Macklin Celebrini is already setting up Quinton Musty for sick snipes. And Musty was drafted by the Sharks last year with the pick they gave to the New Jersey Devils for Timo Meier. So, they've been making smart moves over the years, and I can't say enough nice things about how I feel about the Sharks right now. I think they had a great draft. I love Dickinson. I thought Dickinson would go 5th, 6th, 7th in the draft. He falls to them at 11. He's not the only defenseman that fell a lot farther than I thought he was going to, obviously. But, good for the San Jose Sharks.
They had a very good draft.
I have a note. Everybody keeps saying, and you said it too, the first time the San Jose Sharks ever picked first overall in the NHL draft. That is true. That is a fact. That is an undeniable statement. But I do think about how I think it was 97, they had the 2nd overall pick, and they took Patrick Marleau. Well, who went first in that draft? Joe Thornton, who played like 5 years for the Boston Bruins after that, but then came to San Jose. So they didn't make the number 1 pick that year, but they got the 2 best players from that draft and went on this insane 20-year run where they were one of the best teams in the NHL. You can argue it's one of the best stretches of hockey in NHL history that didn't lead to a Stanley Cup.
That's true. They got to the Cup.
They got to the Cup. Can you think of a team that was more dominant for longer without winning the Stanley Cup?
Probably not.
You're not, because Washington got theirs. St. Louis got theirs.
Maybe the Predators.
Nashville.
Yeah.
Yep, they're in the conversation. But we'll get to them.
And maybe the Wild, but they never got to the Cup.
No, the Wild never got to the Cup.
They were dominant enough to make the playoffs year after year, and they had a good core, but they never got over the hump. They never could make it to the Cup.
100%. Zach Parise played 9 seasons there and missed the playoffs the one time.
And maybe the Jets, but
the Jets are in the conversation. They've been real good. You don't recall the Jets ever. They were that bad that one year. They drafted they drafted Line 2nd overall. But I think they jumped up a lot of spots in that draft too. They were a winner.
But I think the Sharks are the best of the teams we announced. They had
100%. The best version of all those teams. When San Jose had Thornton, Marleau, Pavelski, Couture, Hurdle, Meyer, I want to say that 2019 team that lost to the Blues was it the conference final? No, it was the 2nd round. I think they lost to the Blues. And they came back against Vegas, though. You can argue that team was better than the one that went to the Cup. That you can make, even though they lost in the 2nd round, that doesn't always mean everything. The Blues who beat them went on to win the whole thing. So who knows if the Sharks go on and win the whole thing if they beat the Blues in that series. But then we're talking about the Blues right now as the team who had the longest stretch of dominance without, only one team can win the Cup. That's why not everything in sports can be precedented on whether or not you won the championship, because one team a year wins it. Look at Edmonton. They lost to Florida. Now they have to restart. They could lose in the Cup final next year. Then they have to restart. It's damn hard. But Frank, the rest of the first top 5 picks in the draft, there was only one real shock. At number 2, the Chicago Blackhawks selected Artem Levshunov out of Michigan State. Number 3 overall, the Anaheim Ducks selected Bennett Seneke from the Oshawa Generals. 4th overall, Caden Lindstrom from Medicine Hat is going to the Columbus Blue Jackets. And with the 5th overall pick, the Montreal Canadiens didn't make the same mistake twice. They selected Ivan Demidov from St. Petersburg after passing on Michkov last year. What's your overall takeaway from the top 5, including your favorite team, the Chicago Blackhawks, who picked 2nd overall?
Well, to me, the first 2 picks are obvious. I knew the Hawks were going to take Levshunov. It just, as you got closer to the draft, that's kind of the vibe you got there. I mean, the 3rd pick with the Ducks, that kind of surprised everyone. I don't hate the Caden Lindstrom pick for the Blue Jackets at all. I understand why they did it. And then Demidov fell to into the Canadiens' pockets. The general manager of the Blue Jackets, Don Waddell, stated that they were taking Caden Lindstrom if they had the 2nd overall pick, which makes sense because they weren't taking a defenseman. Obviously, they clearly weren't going defenseman, and they passed up on Demidov anyway because he was available with their 4th pick. So everything that general manager stated checks out, makes sense. They liked what they saw from him to fit in their organization. And Lindstrom, he's coming off a very good WHL season where he was almost goal per game. And they were looking for center depth, and that's what they got. And, Kyle Davidson, this was interesting that I found this out too. Kyle Davidson even tried to make a trade to acquire the 4th overall pick. They were going to take Demidov as well as Levshinov and have both of them. But the Blue Jackets, they had so much faith in Lindstrom and how much of a difference maker he could be on this team that they stand pat on that and stood still. And maybe not the top 5 most people were expected. But that's what makes this NHL draft so exciting is the shocks and the oohs and the ahs. And it was a very good draft. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. When I look at who the Columbus Blue Jackets took 4th overall with Caden Lindstrom, I'm thinking about the way Columbus is building their team, right? And I'm like, okay, well, they've had all these defensemen for a while. They took Jiricek in the top 5. Werenski's already there. Jiricek might have been 6th overall in his draft. Whatever. He was high. Then last year, they get Adam Fantilli, 3rd overall. Adam Fantilli comes out in his rookie year, and he's like right there with Bedard in the Calder conversation until he gets hurt in December. And then Bedard pulls way ahead. Bedard probably would have pulled way ahead anyway, because I do think rookies do generally hit a wall around January, February, especially ones that played college hockey like Fantilli did. But I think he would have ended with, the points per game is right there near the top of all the rookies. I certainly think he gets a nomination if he stays healthy all last season, but a little injury bug gets him. I think he's a number 1 center in the NHL. I think the top 3 picks from last year could line up as one of the best top 3 picks in NHL history. I really do believe that could end up being the case. Then I look at this guy, Caden Lindstrom. I'm like, he could be the number 2 center behind Fantilli, and all of a sudden Columbus has a 1-2 punch. And if Fantilli becomes that guy, and then Caden Lindstrom is an above-average NHL center, you don't win the Stanley Cup without that recipe. And you need the number 1 D, and you need the goalie. Obviously, they're working to see if Jiricek becomes that number 1 D or if there's somebody else in the pipeline. Werenski's not getting any younger, obviously. But, they'll probably figure out goaltending in the coming years. But I like what they did with that pick. And, the only team I really don't understand what Anaheim was doing with Seneke at 3, because they could have traded down, gotten an extra 1st-round pick. And because, I heard the Hawks were trying to come back up. They really pushed hard to get 4.
Yep.
So they can end up with Demidov and Levshinov, which would have just all frickin' spring. Blackhawks fans just screaming at each other on Twitter over who they should draft between the two, and they end up with both. That would have been really funny. But I just can't believe Anaheim didn't trade down a little bit and end up taking Seneke anyway, because he was in a lot of mocks to go to the Devils at 10. And, it is what it is. I love Demidov for the Habs because I think Nick Suzuki's a real high-end number 2 center. And if they ever find that number 1 center, but until now, while Suzuki's the number 1 guy, I think Demidov from St. Petersburg is absolutely a good winger to have with him. We'll see if he plays in the NHL starting next. Or no, I don't think he can. I think he's got a year in the KHL left or whatever. There's something. But I'm excited for the top 5 overall. I just don't really get what Anaheim's doing. Now, maybe they'll prove me wrong. And maybe frickin' Beckett Seneke is awesome. But he was ranked, according to the NHL Central Scouting, he was 13th for North American skaters. So that doesn't even include Demidov or any of the guys coming over from Europe, the Helsinki kid. It's crazy to me that they went that off the board, but teams that draft guys they like, a lot of times do end up developing them because they like them for a reason. I don't know. It was a shock to me, though. But in addition to that one, Frank, what other shockers were there for you in the 1st round?
Well, obviously, you nailed it on the head with the Beckett Seneke. But, another shocker was the Zeev Buim dropping the 12th overall to the Minnesota Wild. I mean, there was a lot of talk about how good Zeev was, and then all of a sudden He's the 6th defenseman chosen in the draft this year. And, you thought maybe he could be the number 1 defenseman chosen, but at least number 2 at best. If
Yeah,
he's
I
not
thought
number
Anaheim
1.
was going to take him at 3.
And he ends up being the 6th defenseman chosen in this year's draft. A lot of teams passed on him, including your New Jersey Devils were one of the teams that passed on him. It goes to make you wonder, what did teams didn't see? What did they like in him after doing some digging on him? So that kind of makes me wonder a little bit what's going on. I mean, I don't know. He should be good. I mean, I can't believe he went to the Minnesota Wild, but and there was another surprise to me too, and that was with Tij Iginla getting drafted by Utah at what, 6th? I had the perfect plan. You have Jerome Iginla come out and announce that
That would have happened.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Flames would be drafting his son. That'd be so cool. But then you have Jerome in the crowd with his son. I feel like if they kind of knew the Flames were going to take him, he would have been backstage preparing maybe a little bit. Because he wouldn't be in the crowd and then come down the crowd to go on stage. I don't know if that would happen. But Jerome said in an interview after with Tij that Utah met with the Iginla family and things went really well. So they kind of knew there was a good chance that his son was going to be drafted by Utah, but it was still shocking to me to see him go that high in the draft. But nonetheless, could have been another Anaheim thing where they kind of liked what they saw. I mean, he was going to go in the top 10 regardless, but 6 to me seemed a little high. But it's just a little shocking to me that he went that high. But, the first ever pick in Utah history as well.
I had the same reaction as you. Everything you just said, I had the same reaction when it first happened. And then I thought about it. And I'm like, wait, I looked at his numbers. I'm like, you're kind of an idiot for thinking he falls to 9. Not you, me. Because he deserved to be drafted higher. Like, it would have been a great Cinderella story for him to freaking, and I don't know if that's the actual definition of a Cinderella story, but a Disney-like story. If he were to get drafted by the Flames, Iginla allows him to wear number 12 because, you can wear a retired number if the person says it's okay. Obviously, Jerome probably would have said it was okay for Teach to wear 12. It didn't happen because Teej earned the right to be drafted higher than 9th. Utah's sitting there at 6th, a brand new franchise. Not brand, you get what I mean, though. Looking to build a fan base, and they have elite players. I think Clayton Keller's a dog. He's a lock for 80 points every single year. We'll see what Cooley turns into. I like what they're building on defense, especially adding Sergachev. We'll get to that in Marino, but it's going to be a much better team. Iginla's probably going to fit right in there. And you know what? After doing some thinking about it, it's like, I was surprised in the moment, but I'm not that surprised when you take a deeper dig because he is that good. And, good players get drafted high. Utah's not in the business of me and you coming on Bardown having a feel-good story to talk about. They do not give a fuck.
It just sometimes feels like it's just meant to be, though, that it's going to happen regardless.
Yes.
It's poetry, like I said.
And it has happened. The Sedins ended up on the same team. Yep. Vancouver traded up to have the 2nd and 3rd overall pick that year. The Devils took Luke Hughes. But you know what? The Devils took Luke Hughes. Maybe that was a tiebreaker overtaking somebody else. But Luke Hughes is a freaking unreal defenseman that was point per game at Michigan, was dominant at the program before that, dummied everyone in World Juniors. And he comes to the NHL and has 40-something points as a rookie defenseman at 18 years old. That's actually why the Devils took Luke Hughes 4th overall, a lot more than the fact that he's Jack's brother. Jack was the number 1 pick because of what he did at the program. You get what I'm saying? So, this stuff does line up. But at the end of the day, Utah just saw a team that they're now taking over. They got shit canned out of the place they were at because they were so pathetic for so long. You're telling me if the Arizona Coyotes win a couple cups in the last 10 years and really drive the interest in the team, they don't move. They would have had enough money to fund a new stadium 4 years ago. So, we've a perfect example is Pittsburgh. They were leaving twice. And then they took Mario Lemieux early, won a couple cups, and then they almost went bankrupt again. He buys the team. They draft Sidney Crosby 1st overall. Winning can cure a lot in sports. Utah is hoping that Tij Iginla helps cure the disgusting disgrace that has been the Arizona Coyotes for the last 20 years. All right, Frank. I need 3 winners and 3 losers from the 2024 NHL draft.
Well, I'm going to touch on him in a bit. So just really quick, it's Tom says, ask Frankie and G. Tom did call Beausois at 18 after they took Levshinov.
I love that.
He wanted him. He wanted him like I wanted more last year.
I love that, Frank, and I love Boisvert. North Dakota, baby. I don't know.
Boisvert?
I don't know.
Beausois, I don't know.
I don't know. He's going to North Dakota next year. That team is stacked. Go look at how many top 3 round picks are going to North Dakota next year. They're going to be in the tournament, right? And you would assume they have a chance to make it to the Frozen Four, and we're going to be able to watch our guy Shasha all that way. I'm pumped. I can't wait for freaking college hockey to come back, but that's a big reason why I was all in on him.
And that leads me to my first winner. I think the Blackhawks were huge winners in this draft. They got exactly what they needed this year. They selected Levshinov, a top-tier defenseman who should eventually be playing on the top line pair. So you're kind of solidifying your top line D pair, which is something I wanted for them as well. Then with the 18th pick, you added to your center depth with Saka Beausois. You need center depth in the NHL. We have tons of great centers in our farm system too. Tons, which I love what the Blackhawks are doing with their center depth. Then when you thought the Blackhawks were done for the night, they make a trade with Carolina and slide into the 27th pick where they add another first round talent to their prospect pool with Merrick Vanacker. All these picks are exactly what the Hawks needed, and they made these picks to go along with what they knew they were eventually going to do with their free agent signings. So one of those winners.
100%. I was going to point out Skokes. Skokes nailed it. I do know it's Sasha. I know it's spelled Saka.
Boisvert.
It is Sasha. So it's got to be Sasha Boisvert. Okay,
Sasha Boisvert.
Yeah, we like to get people's names right when we can.
Boisvert.
Yeah. Even though we called him Skox for how long, and we finally at Bears development camp, he's like, my name's Skokes.
That's really.
I'm
funny.
like, correct. It's Skokes. Duly noted. I like to get people's names right. It's respectful.
Travis says, go Hawks. We got a good crowd here today. Started a little bit late, but, we're here. Second winner, in my opinion, were the Minnesota Wild. I did think from trading from 12 to 13 was kind of pointless because the Flyers weren't going with Zeev, I don't think. But the pick they made at 12 was worth being a winner in itself. Zeev Buim was projected to go to a pretty bad team. If you look at all the teams Zeev was projected to go to, they were going to a bad team. And even though the Wild were bad last year, I don't think the roster is as bad as how they finished in the standings last year. So to add Zeev Buim to a young roster with lots of talent, that's going to be a huge boost for the Minnesota Wild. And that's a big win in it at itself for the Minnesota Wild. And my third winner, I'm going with the San Jose Sharks. Besides the obvious with Macklin Celebrini, the Sharks were able to snag Sam Dickinson, a projected top 10 talent and one of the best defensemen in this year's draft at number 11. Then with their second round picks, they take Igor Chernashov and Leo Saline Wallenius, 2 picks that a lot of mock drafts had as first round caliber talents. They had a very, very strong draft, a draft they may look back on as being one of the biggest turning points in this franchise history.
Yep. Every team you named, I would name a winner. Just for the sake of conversation, I'll pick 2 out of the 3 different, but I do want to talk about the Minnesota Wild. Okay, I'm sure you figured that this was coming. There's a reason most of these teams pick in the top 10 every single year. Because they stink, because their managers are a bunch of idiots, and they don't evaluate talent properly. And that's why Zeev Buim fell. I wholeheartedly believe a good team. I'll tell you why the Minnesota Wild traded up to 12 instead of waiting till 13 to get him. So to make sure that nobody else, another good team, doesn't trade up with Philly to get him. That's why they did it. Because a team like Tampa or Florida or Edmonton, if one of those teams would have gotten their hands on Buim, they could win the cup next year. The Wild wanted to make sure that they got him. He's lined up to be a pair with Faber. I don't know if another team in the league has a young defenseman that would be more of a perfect pair for Buim as he begins his NHL career than the Wild. And I think the Bouillon-Faber tandem could be one of the best pairs in the NHL in 5 years. I really do. And when he wins Rookie of the Year next year or the year after, everyone's going to wonder why. It's reminds me of when Cole Caulfield fell, and people were like, "Oh, well, how did so many teams pass on him?" And Montreal took him in the teens. Like, well, because you're worried about whatever. Bad teams continuously make bad decisions. Why would Columbus want a guy like Zeev Bouillon? They love losing. Why would a team like Anaheim want Zeev Bouillon? They love losing. The Blackhawks, I get. Levshinov, I would have taken Bouillon, but Levshinov and Bouillon, it's a toss. Like, I don't think they're stupid. I never once said they're stupid if they take Levshinov. I would have taken Bouillon after meeting Artie today, though.
Artie the party.
Dude's a dog. But, they're not dumb. And I don't necessarily think taking Demidov over Bouillon is dumb either. I wouldn't have, but I don't think that's dumb either. But like Anaheim could have got Seneke 10th. Like, I am shocked he fell that far. So I do consider the Minnesota Wild a winner of the draft. I'm going to throw the New York Islanders name in the hat. They ended up with Cole Yzerman. I think there's a chance Cole Yzerman comes to the NHL and is a perennial 40 goal scorer within a year or two. He won't score 40 in his rookie year, probably not even his second year. But like I see a similar trajectory too, as a previously mentioned Cole Caulfield. It'll take him a couple years to really fill out into his body. He's not the biggest guy in the world, but he's going to snipe because his shot is better than everybody else's. I mean, it's unreal what he's able to do in terms of goal scoring production. And I'm happy for the Islanders that they were able to get him. Maybe they put him on a line. He'll play 1 year at Boston University. Then he'll probably sign at the end of this year. Maybe they put him on a line with a Bo Horvat or a Barzell, and he finds a way to click real early. And then when we see these redrafts 5 years from now, Yzerman probably creeping back in onto the top 10 in people's opinion. I think they're a big-time winner. And then a third winner I'm going to throw the Montreal Canadiens name out there because they got Demidov, who fell to them at 5, and then they got Michael Hage, who fell to them at 21. I thought Hage, we talked about him possibly going to the Blackhawks. I'm not mad they passed on him for Boisvert. Those two are pretty similar in terms of prospect. Now, don't come at me in 5 years. One of them is going to be better than the other. We just don't know which yet. But, they in terms of prospect evaluation, they were about even. And Hage fell beyond even 18 all the way to 21 in the hat, or was it was 24 maybe even. I forget. It was a little bit after the Islanders took Yzerman. And I thought getting Hage and Demidov in the same draft was a nice pull for Montreal. If you tell any team they're leaving that first round with Hage and Demidov, they're probably pretty stoked about it.
Mm-hmm.
So those are my 3 winners. But I would have thrown Chicago's name into the hat too. And then what was the other one? You said San Jose. Like, yeah, of course, San Jose.
But not even for the Macklin Celebrini. Like, they did great. Even in the second round.
Yes,
Woo!
Absolutely. But yeah, I also like Washington's pick of Cole Hudson in the second round.
I was thinking about making him a winner, but
I thought he'd go late first. But yeah, I thought Washington had a good draft. They've also been one of the offseason winners so far. The Capitals will be a good team next year. That'll be a tough beat in the Metropolitan Division. Frank, who do you have as 3 losers from the 2024 NHL draft?
These are some tough losers here. First off, the St. Louis Blues, huge losers in my opinion. There were a lot of talk on whether or not the St. Louis Blues would trade the number 16th pick. They ended up holding on to it, which is fine. If you don't want to trade it for a player to help you win now, that's fine. I get it. However, it is what they did with their first 3 picks of this year's draft. They went 3 defensemen in a row. And all 3 times they did that, there were better defensemen available. Like, they clearly need help offensively too, as they have a lot. They've gotten rid of a lot of offense over the years, and they did nothing this year to draft any offense. Like, dude, you're using your 3 first picks on defensemen? Like, you guys aren't this offensive juggernaut. Like, unless there's people Snuggerud is in the organization, but still I think defense is not their only problem. So if you want to use 2 out of the 3 or 1 of the 3, I get it, but not all 3. I just didn't like that at all. But they did a lot of talk for having the 16th pick and said, "Oh, we're open to it," and then didn't even really make it worth keeping the pick. So I thought they were big losers. Number 2, for many reasons we already said, the Anaheim Ducks, big losers. They aren't losers for solely taking Beckett Seneke, because this kid could be one of the most talented players in this year's draft. He really could. I just don't like that the Ducks used their 3rd overall pick on him. They could have traded back from 3rd. They could have gotten a little bit extra for their 3rd overall pick and still drafted Seneke. I don't think Columbus, Montreal, Utah, anybody below them really had their eyes set on Seneke, because they had either drafted a more NHL ready prospect or added to their center depth. So I just think this Anaheim's Duck, it was a wasted opportunity by the Ducks to get more out of their 3rd overall pick and still get to draft the player that they wanted. It didn't make sense. And that's why the Ducks have been a bad team for the past handful of years, because the organization doesn't know what to do with these picks and know how to handle these picks. 3rd, the Colorado Avalanche were big losers, in my opinion. They rank in the bottom 3rd of the league with their prospect pool. They barely did anything this year to help that out. Do they need prospects right now? No, not as much as some of the other teams, because they're going to be very good for quite some times. But they're the bottom 3rd of the prospect pools out of the entire NHL. And you draft 3 goalies with your first 5 picks. Why do you need that many goalies in your prospect pool, especially when it's that bad? You got a bad prospect pool as it is. You think like eventually the tide's going to turn. The Colorado Avalanche are going to be a bad team eventually, and you're going to have to rely on some of these prospects. You draft 3 goalies. Like I get it. I really don't get it. I was going to say I get it if you're like top 5 in the prospect. No, I still don't get it. Like Ilya Nabokov is who they took first. He's the best goalie in this year's draft. So that makes sense. That's fine. I understand why you drafted him. But then why are you drafting 2 more goalies after that? Like, none of that made sense to me. Like, they clearly didn't care at all about making their prospect pool better. It was just a very poor outing by the Colorado Avalanche, I think.
I'm with you, Frank. I think we have an agreement on 2 of the 3. I picked the Blues and the Avalanche for basically every reason that you said. Or no, do we have the 3 of the same? Yeah, we do. Yeah, because I also had Anaheim. And I like Juracek as a prospect. I just don't get why the Blues drafted him.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make much sense to me. I mean, they have a lot of work to do overall, but it would have been nice to see them add like an Yzerman, right?
Exactly. They need
like
offense.
Yeah, or like who went after him? Liam Greentree didn't go till 26th.
If the Blues think their offense is that good in their prospect pool, they got another thing coming to waste 3 picks in a row. That is crazy to me.
Yeah, and then the Hawks took Boisvert, who absolutely would have been a good fit for the Blues.
Like who else was available at 16? Hayes was available.
Yep.
Not Luchenko.
Trevor Connolly
was Yakimchuk. He's a forward, right? Carter Yakimchuk. I liked him. I was hoping the Hawks would take him. He might have been available, but you take Jiracek? Really?
Yeah, and like Juracek's brother,
he's great.
He's amazing, and this Juracek is good too. The problem with this Juracek, he got hurt in his draft year. That always hurts guys. He got hurt in the first game of the World Juniors and didn't return the rest of the season, like even up to now. So when he comes back to training camp, I don't know his participation in development camp, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, we have the same 3 because again, Anaheim, they went way off the board at 3, and then they had another pick again, and they took Stein Solberg from Norway, which is fine. But like again, I'm looking at the players that were available, and I see Liam Greentree and Merrick Vanacker and Emil Hemming, EJ Emery is a real good player that the New York Rangers took at 30. Even some of the guys that slipped into the second round. So yeah, I have them, and then Colorado. Like they were my number 1, even over Anaheim.
Yeah, they were.
Maybe you get to a point where you're like so ignorant as an organization because of how great you are. But it's still you can like make it last longer by being better overall.
3 goalies.
Yeah, that's crazy. And yeah, Frank, I was looking at the discourse in the chat right now. Yakimchuk
Yeah.
is a defenseman. He was drafted by Calgary 7th overall.
Yeah, but I rather
Um,
Yakimchuk, I think, than Jiricek, just for the Hawks' sake.
yeah, no, I
Maybe
agree.
Jiricek fits St. Louis better, but if it was me,
Well,
I like
Yakimchuk was taken 8 picks earlier, however
Oh,
many
was he?
picks earlier.
Was he?
Yeah, he went 7th to Ottawa.
Oh,
So
yeah. He's great. He's
yeah,
great.
he's very
He
good.
wasn't
He's
projected
very
that
good.
high either. There were
No,
talks about the Hawks potentially getting him at 18.
you know when you play fantasy football and you draft in August, and like the first 2 rounds are almost all exclusively wide receivers and tight ends, and then that one
Yeah.
asshole takes Patrick Mahomes early in the third
Yeah.
round, and then there's a run of quarterbacks from that point on. We kind of had that yesterday or in the draft with defensemen. That just like
Sure.
7 of them went out of the next 8 picks and they were supposed to be a little bit lower, except for Buyam, Levshinov, and Dickinson. And Dickinson and Buyam ended up going after some of these guys. So it's definitely interesting. We have mostly the same winners. I threw in a couple extra winners. Because it's hard to like call out losers, and you could call out winners. I think winners are easy to identify early in the draft stage, but it's a little harder to identify losers. So that's why I think there is just kind of like the 2 or 3 teams that stick out because they either took a billion goalies or they went way off the board with a top 5 pick. So yeah, Frank, some of these guys have already made their way to development camp. And I was fortunate enough to go to development camp today. It was wonderful. Got to speak with Artem Levchinov, not necessarily speak to him. He spoke at the podium and the media asked questions. Do you want a funny story first or a more serious story first?
Start funny.
Start funny. Johnny Oduya's in town. Apparently, Johnny Oduya is this expert at breathing technique and using that in your workouts. So the Blackhawks bring him in to help the young prospects as they develop their bodies. You know, there's 3 types of development for a kid playing hockey. There's his actual hockey ability, shooting, passing, skating, whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's the body. You're 18 years old. Just because my body looked like a melted ice cream cone at 18 years old doesn't mean these guys do. They're still growing. You're not fully grown yet.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also the mental game, the brain. Well, what Oduya does with them helps them in 2 aspects, the brain and the body. He's helping them with their breathing and how you can implement it with your working out and stuff. We heard from Mark Eaton, the assistant GM, that Oduya was doing this, right? So then somebody asks him about it while he's at the podium, and he goes, "Who?" Like Johnny Oduya, 2-time Stanley Cup champion, played around the league. Yeah, I don't know who that is. Someone goes, "The guy who taught you how to breathe." He goes, "Oh, the breathing guy." Like, that's 2-time Stanley Cup
Yeah.
champion Johnny Oduya, Bulgarian Artem Levshunov, who didn't watch NHL hockey probably too much in 2013 and 15. But it was a funny moment. The whole room was cracking up over that. My serious story is we asked Mark Eaton what the plan is for Levshunov next year. And he danced around it a little bit, as these politicians that run hockey teams do. But he was great and he's very thoughtful with his answers. But he danced around the question, but he made it seem like he's coming to the AHL. He's going to sign his pro contract and play for Rockford next season. There's no room for him on the blue line this year. There's just not. Like Korchinski might play for Rockford. That's how deep they are on defense now with some of the signings that they made. But they asked him about it. And he, like you said, like you would assume, he danced around the question a little bit, was prepped for this question, I'm sure. But someone asked him if it was his decision or the organization. He said it was a combination of both. So based on what I heard today, not my opinion of what he should do, just from what I gathered today, it sounds like he's going to play for the Rockford Ice Hogs next season. What's your takeaway from what you're hearing from me reporting from development camp on Levshunov?
Makes sense. I mean, the Hawks were very active in free agency. Got some defensemen. They already had some great defensemen in the organization. Alex Vlasic, I love that kid. Eventually, Seth Jones will be moved off the top pair later on in this core group. I think Levshunov will be a number one defensive pair, if not second at best, but deserves to be on the top pair eventually. But I don't hate the idea of going down to the AHL, get some time to develop down there. Yeah, it's really not the worst case scenario because, like you said, there's really not a lot of room on this team right now.
I want to be clear with something with you. The options aren't play for the Blackhawks or play for Rockford. The options are play for Rockford or go back to Michigan State. Those are what they were discussing with him, and it sounds like he's going to Rockford, or he's going to sign his pro contract.
In my opinion, he's NHL level ready, so there's no need to go back to college. I'd play in Rockford and get that type of experience because I think you're obviously going to play against better kids in the AHL than you would in college. I mean, there are some NHL ready players down there in Rockford who have played in the NHL. I think that's the right decision here, 100%.
I'm with you. I think he'll go play for Rockford. He might make his NHL debut. We'll see. But I think signing his pro contract and playing for them was probably more beneficial for him. So we'll see how that goes. Just a couple other recaps from development camp. You can go read all of it on X and watch the videos that I posted from Chicago Hockey Now on their Twitter page. We heard from Nick Lardis, who I was not expecting to hear from. I remember texting you that Oliver Moore was next, and Oliver Moore came eventually, but actually Nick Lardis came next, like kind of surprising to everyone. And it was last minute, but he was teammates with, now I'm drawing a blank on his name, first round pick the Blackhawks made.
Marek
Vanacker. They're teammates in the O, and they're going to play together again this year. It was good to hear that, and that Marek has somebody in the organization that he can kind of lean on that's been here a little bit. I'm excited about that. And then one thing I found interesting, Sam Rinzel and Ryan Green came up to the podium at the same exact time. They spoke together. And obviously Rinzel is at Minnesota and Ryan Green is at Boston University. Somebody asked, I don't understand why they thought they were going to get this answer, but somebody asked Ryan Green what Macklin Celebrini's plans are going to be, whether he's going back to college or not. He's like, yeah, I don't really know. We don't talk about that stuff. That's a decision for him and his family. I think we all know Celebrini's going to end up playing for the Sharks, but it was funny. Green is going to go back to BU for another year and take a third stab at winning the national championship. They were in the Frozen Four both times he was there so far. He's a big-time player for them. We'll see if he ever ends up playing for the Blackhawks. As far as Rinzel, he is excited to go back to Minnesota and have a chance at making the tournament this year. They have a good thing. Someone asked him, like, what are you working on the most on an individual standpoint? And I thought his answer was interesting because you don't hear guys admit this too often. He's like, my defense is a knock on me. And I've been working on that hardcore. I know I can produce, but, you have to be able to defend in order to play in the NHL. And I liked hearing that from him. So, and then Oliver Moore spoke. That was cool. He admitted that the first half of last year wasn't what he wanted, and he knows it, while playing for Minnesota. But then he gets to the World Juniors. They win gold. And then the second half of the year, he kind of exploded a little bit. Sounds to me like these college hockey guys that are playing for the Blackhawks have a little bit of confidence in what they're going to be able to do this upcoming season in their attempt to make it to the NHL.
Does Oliver Moore make his debut, you think, this year?
No. Only because he's going to play at Minnesota. They'll probably be really good, and I don't think the Blackhawks are going to make the playoffs. So, they're probably not going to sign him and play him. Maybe if it is, it's at the end of the year and he plays one or two games, and we'll see.
Okay.
But Oliver Moore, I do believe, will be an NHL player. And then we heard from Marek Vanacker at the end he was the last person to speak at the press conference in person. But it was cool to hear from him too. So 2 of the 3 first-round picks that the Blackhawks made spoke at the podium today, along with a couple guys that have been there for a while. It was truly one of the coolest experiences. Besides hearing from the players, though, hearing from Mark Eaton, the assistant general manager and the head of player development, he's I think about when I used to listen to Chris Getz talk about White Sox player development. It sounded like just a complete dummy was talking the whole time. This guy, you could tell he's smart. He knows what to do to get the most out of people and players, and he was by far one of my favorite people to listen to talk during this process. But yeah, it was really cool to see all these guys today.
Sounds like a lot of fun, yeah.
It was. And then I'll be going back on Friday, and I'll be happy to report on it on our next show. Kyle Davidson. He will be speaking at the podium, so we'll be able to hear from the chief, and I can't wait to hear what he has to say about all this. This is going to be great. And then right as we're getting ready to leave, Frank, Alec Martinez is going to be on Zoom in 10 minutes, so everybody fire up your computers. And then we sat there and listened to Alec Martinez talk about his decision to come play for the Chicago Blackhawks for about 30 minutes. The guy likes to ramble on when he's asked a question. Every question he gets, he goes on for, kind of reminds me of me, just goes on for 5 minutes about every question that he's asked. But it was funny. Tracy Myers, who writes for the Chicago Blackhawks for NHL.com, she's the first. She's like automatically first, no matter what, for every question. She welcomed him to Chicago, blah, blah, blah. How does it feel to play for the Chicago Blackhawks? Okay, he gives his answer. The second question. Alec, I seem to recall a time where you scored a pretty big goal at the United Center. You were on the away team. You scored the Game 7 overtime winner against the Chicago Blackhawks while a member of the Los Angeles Kings. And he got the whole room to laugh. He goes, I can't believe it wasn't until the second question that I heard this asked, and I've been thinking of how I'm going to answer it and then he went into it. It was really cool to hear Martinez. Very good addition to this team. I don't know what your thoughts are on the Martinez signing. We'll get to Chicago's free agency in the second period, but I do like this. He's always in the right place at the right time, and he does the little things to help teams win. He's not a gifted offensive player. But what are your thoughts on that whole thing?
Sounds really cool. It sounds like a lot of these guys are excited to be part of the Blackhawks. It makes me excited. I'm excited for what's to come. I just really hope like Oliver Moore and all these guys make their way to the NHL. I think they will. Very excited about Alex Martinez. We'll talk about him, like you said, in the second period. Alec Martinez gave me a lot of good and bad memories. He also scored the game-winning goal against the Rangers to win the Cup, which was pretty cool. So yeah, I'm excited. I like what the Hawks did. Sounds like you had a great time. Got a lot of information for this whole thing, and you have to keep me updated what they say on Friday.
Absolutely. It's great. It's an amazing opportunity. I'm excited. Mark Lazarus, who writes for the Chicago Blackhawks for The Athletic, was saying something to me and a couple other people that were listening while it was like in between players. He talked about how Alec Martinez, it was when we found out Martinez was coming on Zoom later. Mm-hmm. He goes, he had the greatest 2-week stretch in the history of the NHL. And if you think about it, he called it the greatest fortnight in NHL history. And I thought about it, and I'm like, okay. In Game 7 of the conference finals, he scored in overtime on the road. And then 2 weeks later, he scores the overtime winner in Game 5 to win the Kings the Stanley Cup. Is there a better stretch a player ever had over 2 weeks in NHL history? There really? I tried to think about, like, did Sid do anything similar? Like Ovechkin, like we've seen McDavid? Like, no. It's freaking Martinez with the 2 big goals that advanced his team. You could have argued like maybe Henrique would have had the greatest playoff of all time if he would have done something crazy in the Cup final and they won, because he had the overtime winner in Game 7 against the Panthers in the first round and the overtime winner in Game 6 against the Rangers to send them to the final. But no, it's Martinez. Like, I just thought that was awesome. It was really cool to hear Mark break that down. Player. Yes, for sure. All right, Frank, we got some stuff to talk about here in period number 2. Breaking news. You probably had this guy on your top guys still left section of your our page here, but we're going to announce it now. Do you know?
No.
The Detroit Red Wings have made a signing. They are bringing in Stanley Cup champion, two-time Stanley Cup champion now, Vladimir Tarasenko.
Wow.
He is now the guy going to Detroit. They reunited Tarasenko and Kane from their time as New York Ranger
Yeah,
legends. Interesting move
it
for
is
Detroit.
interesting.
I like that for them because they were one of my free agent losers, and I can no longer. My whole second period's messed up because of the signing.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's they could use a guy like Tarasenko. Honestly, another veteran Stanley Cup, two-time Stanley Cup champion. Interesting signing by the Red Wings.
Absolutely. All right, Frank, we're going to roll through these. Nashville, Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay lets Steven Stamkos go. He signs with Nashville for 4 years at $8 million. A little bit of an overpay for Stammer. I think he probably take less to stay with Tampa if he got the term. But if you're Nashville, like, who cares? Right? Like, you're getting Steven Stamkos. And then right after they sign Steven Stamkos, they get Jonathan Marchessault, who's probably the second best. You could actually argue Marchessault's the first best free agent winger that was available. I know Stamkos is going to the Hall of Fame. He's got 555 goals. Marchessault can't hold his jock up to Steven Stamkos in terms of overall career. But heading into 2024, you can argue that Marchessault is just as good, if not better, and they got both. And then they signed Brady Shea a couple hours later, and all of a sudden they look like a cup contender again. What are your thoughts on Tampa Bay making this monumental mistake? And what are your thoughts on Nashville getting the honky tonk a little extra started early?
Nashville is going to be a scary team this year because they also agreed to an 8-year contract with Saros to stay in Nashville. They've clearly had the best offseason so far without question. This team's going to be very good. Stamkos and Marchessault used to be teammates for Tampa Bay, so they get to reunite. Man, as a Hawks fan, seeing them in the Central Division, I hate to see that because they're just going to be so good this year. Tampa Bay, on the other hand, they made some mistakes. It seemed like Stamkos wanted to stay in Tampa Bay. They couldn't get things done. Kind of felt bad for him. You let your captain go. They did end up signing Hedman to a 4-year deal worth $32 million, $8 million
The
per year.
same exact contract as Stamkos.
Yep. So obviously they couldn't work both in. Somebody was needing to take a pay cut, and I know Stamkos would have taken a pay cut. He was so loyal to that fan base, and they also got Gensel 7 years at $63 million. Another great signing. You kind of replaced Steven Stamkos a little bit, but Steven Stamkos being the captain, it's a little bit different. Gensel's going to come in, but those are going to be some hard shoes to fill. I mean, obviously Nashville won by a landslide, and this is almost a way as saying we're not rebuilding the Tampa Bay Lightning, but we're kind of taking a step back, but we still want to be good. So we're going to re-sign Hedman. We're going to sign Gensel. We're not going full out. We still got Vasi. We don't want to go full-blown rebuild, and we're not even close to a rebuild. We're just kind of tweaking some things to save some money, and we still want to be competitive. That's kind of what I felt here. I just feel bad for Stamkos. I really do. I think he'll be fine in Nashville. I think, they're going to have a lot of success over there, but it didn't seem like they left on good terms, but I just felt like they didn't leave on as best of terms as they could have. I feel like he really, really wanted to stay in Tampa Bay.
See, I'm thinking a little more harshly. For one, let me talk about Nashville. What a sick team. I mean, they can realistically compete for the Central Division next year. And if you compete for a division title, you could compete for the Stanley Cup. I have no doubt of that. I don't believe there's any team ever that could win a division and not be considered one of the 5 or 6 Stanley Cup favorites. That's just how it goes in sports. You win your division, you have a chance. And I think Nashville, they could come in first and they could come in fourth, but there won't be much of a disparity. Like, I believe the Wild will be better. The Jets are good. The Stars are probably still the cream of the crop in the division, right? Same thing, Colorado, but Colorado needs a second-line center like they need air to breathe. But And we'll see if Middlestat can be that guy. He wasn't in the playoffs, but we'll see. They're in the mix, Nashville. They're right there.
100%.
Stamkos, they get Marchessault, they get Shea. More now than ever, and it's kind of flipped in the last 10 years. Nashville's like a destination. People go there for vacation. It's bachelorette capital of the world. Probably even more than Vegas these days. It's a little cheaper. It's a little easier to get to if you live in the Midwest, for sure. And you sign with the Predators, and you play in the arena that is on the end of the biggest party street in the world, like one of the biggest party streets in the world, Broadway. It's one of the funnest streets you could find yourself on in the United States of America. What street is Vegas on? What's the name of the street that Vegas is on? The Strip.
I don't
Okay,
know.
it's whatever the Vegas Strip, freaking Times Square, right? Like that's got to be in the mix. And Broadway, those are the funnest streets in the world. And Stamkos and Marchessault, they're just going to go create a party. Another reason to go to Nashville and party, right? You could go to the game, and then when you're done, you could go to Tootsie's and drink your ass off while listening to country music. It's awesome. I love Nashville. It is one of my favorite places. You can't
Las Vegas Boulevard.
Oh, Las Vegas. Okay, yeah, duh. It's awesome. I can't wait to see Stammer play there. It's going to be great. Like, yeah, Marchessault and Shea, those guys are great too, especially Marchessault. He's one of the best snipers in the NHL. He had 42 goals last year. But Stamkos had 40. And it's just going to bring a vibe there that I think they are going to Nashville doesn't win free agency ever. They are now. But that's just going to be awesome. That's a place to play. More free agents are going to go there in the future than you would think. Like, man, imagine if a guy like McDavid or Draisaitl packed their bags and went to Nashville one of these years. Like, I'm telling you, when I say it is one of the funnest places to find yourself you will ever believe. So that's my thing for Nashville. Good for them. We'll see you in the playoffs when we make our preseason predictions. I'm sure they'll be high on both of our lists. Tampa Bay. What a bunch of fucking idiots. I swear to God. They make no sense what they're doing. They brought back McDonough, who's a great player. McDonough's fine, but they took back all that money, and you trade for Jake Gensel, who's a great player. Again, he's a great player, and he proved with Carolina that it wasn't just all because of Crosby or Malkin. He went to Carolina and was great there too. I hate when people use this player is only good because they have that player. Most of the time, it's nonsense. Did Hyman have 50 instead of 30 because he played with McDavid? Yes, but he's still there's a reason every other guy that tried to play with McDavid failed. Hyman is a great player. It was the same thing for Gensel. Only Kunitz and Gensel I remember landing, and Dupuis a little bit, landing with Crosby and having success. Everyone else failed. Sherry, Rust. Rust plays better with Malkin. Phil Kessel played better with neither. Like, some guys like to just have the puck. Gensel, he's a great player on his own. You're not going to tell me that for one season, just one season, 2024-25, you would rather have Gensel, McDonough over Sergachev, Stamkos. You just wouldn't. Sergachev is one of the best defensive defensemen in the NHL. He doesn't jump off the page at you because he's not Cale Makar or Victor Hedman, like in terms of offense. But is he Hjalmarsson or maybe even better? Yes, he's absolutely one of those top flight defensemen. And Tampa was just like, nah, he could go to Utah and he's going to be a number one there and it's going to be sick. I just can't believe the decisions that Brisebois has made in the last 2 months to move off of Sergachev and Stamkos. And that money, it's not even like they saved that money. They're using it on Gensel and McDonough. Gensel's younger than Stamkos. I get it. But when Stamkos starts to fall off and Gensel's still a good player, though, where are the Lightning going to be overall? I'll tell you where. The dump. They're going to be bad in 5 years. So if Stamkos is only good for 3 more years, but Gensel's good for 6 more years, so when Gensel's still good and Stamkos starts to fall off, the Lightning are going to suck, so it won't matter anyway. So I don't understand this decision making in any way. We'll see if they prove me wrong and freaking win the cup because they still have Kucherov and Daddy Vasilevsky and Hedman. But like, I just can't justify the moves that they made. Vibes are going to be down without Stamkos. I just don't see it. Like, who are they going to name the captain now? Is it going to be Kucherov? Is it going to be, Hedman? I mean,
I think they're going to go with Hedman.
maybe they will go with Hedman.
I don't think it's going to be Cooch.
I don't either. I think it'll be. I could also see it being Braden Point. Don't forget, Braden Point is one of the best players in the NHL too. And Gensel's going to play with either Braden Point or Kucherov. It's going to be a great fit for him. I'm not saying he's not going to fit in. I just don't really understand Tampa Bay's line of thinking.
I don't know. It was strange. This team's going to be a lot different this year. But then again, are they really? Like, we think the vibes may be down, but are they just going to come out and just, freaking win the Atlantic?
Yeah, it's very possible. It's very possible. I don't understand. Maybe they'll play each other in the cup.
Maybe they'll be better. Like, Stamkos does more than just score and produce and as a playmaker. He's just more than that. He's the captain. He brought life to the locker room and stuff like that, which you're trading production for production from Guentzel. He'll produce. He'll fill those shoes a little bit, but he's not going to come in and bring the vibe that Steven Stamkos did. And that's what you're missing there. And sometimes that's more important. So we'll see. It's going to be a different feeling, even though you really didn't lose a ton of production. It's just going to be a different feeling though.
Absolutely. I like it. I like Guentzel. And like I said about Point and Kucherov, they're two of the top 20 offensive players in the NHL.
Mm-hmm.
But Stamkos, I know they had LeCavier and St. Louis and Kucherov even, but like Stamkos is the best player in Lightning history. He's first in goals, assists, points, games played, this, that, and everything else. Kucherov might pass him now. We'll see. It's possible. But like 555 goals at 33 years old or 34. Like, he'll probably pass 600. He'll probably flirt with 700. And like, if he never really missed 2 full years of injury, we could be talking about 800. It's not going to happen, but like, he's a legendary player, and I was mind blown. But from one team that recently lost the Stanley Cup final to another, the Edmonton Oilers, they had a great stretch so far here. I actually think they're better now than they were 2 weeks ago. And, of course, they added Jeff Skinner and Victor Arvidsson, two high-end offensive players coming to the Edmonton Oilers. Frank, Edmonton's going to win the cup next year.
You needed depth. You needed to improve that depth. They did that. They're one win away from winning the Stanley Cup. And they didn't need to be at, like, the forefront of any major moves. They didn't need to go out for Stamkos or Guentzel or Mitch Marner, stuff like that. They just have gone ahead and made a lot of moves, but moves that just kind of improved the depth a little bit, like Arvidsson and Skinner. And you didn't sign them long term, 1 year for Skinner, 2 years for Arvidsson. It was just, we kind of basically, they're saying we have what we have. That's enough. We just need to fill in some gaps here and there. And that's what they did. It's been a great offseason for them so far.
100%. If they come into next year with their top 6 being Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl down the middle, and then the 4 wingers are Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Zach Hyman, Victor Arvidsson, Jeff Skinner, and then Dylan Holloway will probably be on the third line, or you could put Skinner on the third line and mix and match and make the third line even deeper. And you have Bouchard on the back end, and maybe they add another piece. We'll see what happens with goaltending. But, I'm a believer in Stu. When Stu's on his game, he's one of the best. When he stinks. Like, we've seen it. But, like, you're 1 win away from the Stanley Cup. You're 1 goal away from the Stanley Cup, basically. I believe they can get it done with him. But with adding Arvidsson is unreal. People don't realize how sick, filthy, nasty Arvidsson is. And he's going to have 80 points playing on one of those lines. That right there is where you can give a guy a boost based on his line mates. Because you know how good he already is.
Mm-hmm.
So he could have, and same thing with Skinner. Skinner's got the most goals, games played, and points for an active player that never played at a playoff game. He was in Carolina for all the shitty years there, and then right when they started to get good, they ship him off to Buffalo, and they stink for the half decade that he's been there. So Skinner will play in the playoffs next year for the first time. He could be a playoff GOAT for all we know. and we'll find out next year. I'm excited for Edmonton. I think they so far have to be my number one favorite out of the West again. Frank, the Chicago Blackhawks just made a shit ton of signings. I'll read them off real quick. I have them handy thanks to my work on Chicago Hockey Now. We actually had a graphic made for us where it had all the signings on it, and then I listed off how much they made. They got Tyler Bertuzzi for 4 years at $5.5 million per. Teuvo Teravainen comes back to the team that he won the Stanley Cup with, 3 years at $5.5 million. Alec Martinez, who we already talked about, 1 year, $4 million. TJ Brody, 2 years, 3.75. Laurent Brossoit, 2 years, 3.3 million. Patrick Maroon, 1 year, $1.3 million. Craig Smith, 1 year at $1 million. And then Joey Anderson, former Devil, 2 years at $800K. I believe Joey Anderson's is a two-way, so he could play for Rockford as well. Frank, it's a lot of music coming to Chicago.
A lot of music. I saw a funny post saying that this is like an old Bruins team because there's so many ex-Bruins on this list.
Yeah, there
are. What is there, like 5?
Craig Smith, Pat Maroon, Bertuzzi, Hall, Foligno.
Or yeah, Hall, Foligno on the team. Yeah, not only, yeah, there's a lot of on the team. I love a lot of these signings. I really do. You really put players around Connor Bedard. You got some defensemen in there. Some pairing 3 defensemen. Teuvo Teravainen knows this organization. Very different organization than what it was in 2015. Not a lot of familiar faces left, obviously. But I like that you added Tyler Bertuzzi and Teuvo Teravainen to a medium-term contract. Guys that could put up 20 plus. You're actually putting guys around Bedard now that could play make, and you don't have muffins passing to him. And Bedard could pass to these guys and they could score. That's going to improve Bedard's production tremendously. Laurent Brossoit, love that you added Laurent Brossoit as well. Peter Mrazek and Brossoit is a 1-2. Let's not forget Brossoit was a part of Hellebuck as a backup. If he played more games, his name would have been on the Jennings Trophy. He was great last year. His stats were great. You love to see it. Then you had guys like the veterans, like Patrick Maroon and
Brody.
I guess TJ Brody, yeah, and I guess Craig Smith. He's been around a while. Alec Martinez, guys like that. You added veterans too. All these signings, you added a bunch of stuff. You added veterans, scorers, defense, goaltenders. That's like I'm not saying they're not going to be like this great team who's going to have 100-point season, but I also don't think they're going to be competing for the number 1 overall pick next year. They've made a lot of moves. I like these moves. I can't wait for the season. I wish it was October.
I'm a fan of these moves as well. I think they'll be a much more improved. They'll be a harder team to play against. We'll see if it translates to wins. I'm not skeptical on it translate. I just don't think it matters. I think what matters next year is playing well, seeing more from Bedard, the team being hard to play against. They should not be a cakewalk every night. They won't be. I don't believe they will be. I also think Kyle sent us all a message, and I just had an article be published while we were on this show, and it's including quotes that we got today from Mark Eaton and a couple other people. I believe the Hawks are telling us something. I believe Rockford will try to compete for the Calder Cup this year. I wouldn't be surprised to see Lucas Reichel, Korchinski, Nazar, Comesso, and Soderblom all play 82 games with Rockford. I think it's possible Reichel and Korchinski are up and down throughout the year. But, because there are going to be injuries and stuff like that. They'll play some games here and there. There's no doubt. But Nazar, I'm looking at the lines right now. I don't see where you get Nazar in there. He's not playing. Like, Teravainen's playing over him. Pat Maroon's playing over him. Craig Smith is playing over him. I'm not saying any of those people are better because they're not. But I honestly think in Kyle's mind, you can either have Frank Nazar be the center on a team in Rockford with Korchinski and Levshinov as the top pair, and you have Soderblom and Comesso. They let Jackson Stauber walk. I thought that was weird. But they kept Comesso and Soderblom in Rockford because you got Brossoit now to be a tandem with Mrazek. If one of them gets hurt for 2 weeks or whatever, they'll get called up. I'm sure Comesso and Soderblom will make at least one start throughout the year, if not more. But by the time the AHL playoffs start next year, I think that lineup could just be so dirty nasty. If you have Reichel down there, and if you have like Reichel's kind of shown he could be an AHL superstar, like not even just an above average player, like a superstar down there. You're waiting for it to click in the NHL. It's possible that it comes. But like Nazar, like why would you want Oliver Moore to make, like I would just have all these guys sign, play for Rockford over season a little bit. You saw what happened to Alex Vlasic. Alex Vlasic probably could have played in the NHL 2 years ago. I actually will go as far to say he absolutely could have played in the NHL 2 years ago, but they didn't call him up. There is no reason to have him play third pair minutes on the worst team in the league. It's just not necessary. And you can argue if you took Connor Bedard off last year's team, they're just as bad as the Sharks. So, like, why do you need anyone who can't handle it on a good team or on a bad team? I think that's where the Chicago Blackhawks are headed. They have a lot of veterans in the mix to make them harder to play against. Good for Bedard. I think that's the most important thing, is developing him and taking a run at the Calder Cup when the time is right. I love what the Blackhawks did in free agency. I do think they sent a message, though.
They were very good in free agency. I loved it. It was fantastic.
100%. And then we'll go through the Bruins and Devils together, because I know we're kind of on a time crunch because we started late. Bruins and Devils. Bruins added Zadorov and Lindholm. They needed a number one center. They needed a defenseman to replace Matt Grzelcyk. And then the Devils add Brett Pesce. They add Brendan Dillon. They add Stefan Nason. And they add Tomas Tatar. I like what both teams did.
Both teams did good. Bruins lost a lot of guys. They lost Allmark. They also lost DeBrusk.
Yep, Vancouver.
They needed to fill some spots here. They did that. I like Nikita Zadorov. And I liked Elias Lindholm too. I really like Lindholm. That Lindholm signing is good. Locked up both for 6 and 7 years, which is great. The Bruins, they'll be fine. I think that these signings help. I think that getting rid of Allmark, you needed to get rid of those the pair. You just can't run into that. There's so many questions of Swayman, Allmark, who starts. You got to get rid of that. They did that. These signings will help them out a lot. Added to their depth a little bit. I like what the Devils did. Brett Pesce, fantastic player, 6 years, locked him up long term. Tomas Tatar, only there for a year, but he'll help the depth too there. I mean, both teams did really good in this offseason. A lot of teams did really good in this offseason. So it's been fun. It's been a very fun offseason. And hey, we're just getting started, though. There'll be more moves, obviously, as we go throughout the summer.
I don't know if Lindholm is going to play with Pasternak or Marchand or both, but I think they needed a number one center. They'd love for Lindholm to be their number two guy. I'm sure over the course of his contract, they'll probably try to find somebody to be an upgrade as the number one. But they had 2 third-line centers as their top 2 centers last year, Zacha and Coyle. Now you could shift one of them to wing, have the other play third line, and I think the Bruins are a much deeper team up front thanks to the Lindholm signing. And then you bring in Zadorov. Man, Zadorov's probably going to play with McAvoy. And you'll have a couple other guys, Carlo, the Bruins they're never have an issue with defense. And then Swayman, the goalie, it's going to be a much improved team thanks to adding Zadorov and Lindholm. Brett Pesce for the Devils is one of the best defensemen in the NHL at shutting down passing lanes, statistically. All the advanced stats say it's really hard to make a pass cross ice when Brett Pesce's on the ice. The Devils needed that. They allowed a lot of nice plays to be made against them last year. And you figure with Allmark in net, adding a guy like that and Dillon to the defense, you're running Luke Hughes, Dougie Hamilton, Brett Pesce, Brendan Dillon, Simone Nemitz, who we talk about. He's great, number 2 pick from 2022. And then you'll use Siegenthaler and a couple other guys, maybe Seamus Casey from time to time. He'll probably spend some time in Utica. But the Devils' defense is much improved over where it was last year with Brendan Smith playing big minutes. I'm excited about that. I love that they improved their defense, added some depth up front with Nason, who was awesome with Carolina. And, he's familiar with the Devils. He's been there before. And then same thing with Tatar. He's been with the Devils too. So we'll see how that goes. I'm really, really impressed with how the Devils handle things. I would love one more top 6 forward. I was actually hoping for Tarasenko. But, now you'll see who's in the top 6. You got Hughes, Heischer, Meyer, and Bratt. That's the top 4. the big four. And then you probably fill in Dawson Mercer around a little bit, and you see where you fit Andre Palat. And then they traded for Paul Cotter, too. Paul Cotter will play on their fourth line. He's got a lot of skill. He's good defensively. Vegas loved having him. So we'll see how that goes. But Bruins and Devils both made some smart moves. I think they are better teams today than they were 3 weeks ago. One last individual I wanted to touch on before we move along here. Tyler Toffoli signs with the San Jose Sharks. Didn't see a player of that caliber signing with the Sharks in an offseason like this, but it is reminiscent of a guy like Taylor Hall coming to the Blackhawks, or sometimes teams with number one picks land good players to help them. Toffoli, his wife is a native of that area, so I'm sure that went into it a little bit. Happy wife, happy life, right? They go to San Jose. He's going to be there for a while. He'll probably play with Celebrini right off the bat. I think it's a good move for him and the Sharks, because Toffoli's won everything. He's made $1 billion. Go play at home, at your wife's home, in an area you're familiar with. I think it's a good move for him, and it's an opportunity for him to score a crap ton of goals.
Yeah, the Sharks, they were in desperate need of a veteran of this caliber. He had 3 straight seasons with at least 30 goals. It probably will happen again on the Sharks because there's nobody to really score on the Sharks. But you run into the problem that you don't have as many playmakers making plays to score goals to Tyler Toffoli. So we'll see what happens there. The biggest takeaway, I think, with Toffoli on the Sharks is they got a veteran player to help build this very young team. Obviously help with Macklin Celebrini's development. They're not going to be Stanley Cup contenders during the 4 years that he's there. I don't think that's why they brought him in. I think they brought him in strictly for development purposes, which is weird. I don't really like the length of the contract. I thought 4-year contract for Toffoli on this team was a bit strange. I maybe like a 2-year would have been better. But nonetheless, I do like the signing. I just hate the length of it. I just wish it was for a little less. I wish it wasn't as long term. I think the Sharks jumped the gun a little bit. I think you sign him for 2 years. We'll see where we're at after 2 years. You can re-sign him if need be, but nonetheless, I do like the signing for the San Jose Sharks.
100%. 100%. I see a graphic right now. There are so many BU players playing at development camp right now. Ryan Green's one of them. Heard him speak today for the Blackhawks. Doug Grimes for the Devils. Matthew Caron for the Bruins. Aiden Celebrini with the Vancouver Canucks. Yes, it is Macklin's brother. Quinn Hudson. Jack Hughes, the other Jack Hughes, playing with the Los Angeles Kings. Always proud to be you. I didn't go there, but I love Terrier hockey. I love Hockey East. Someone cracked a joke at our friend Tab today. Was it Ben Pope? Someone joked with Tab and said they got a little vulgar. Someone goes, "Hey Tab, do you just have one TV to watch every fucking Big Ten hockey game throughout the regular season?" And Tab goes, "Yes." And I'm thinking to myself, that's literally me with Hockey East. I watch Big Ten. I watch North Dakota. They're kind of an outlier in their conference in Denver for me personally. But, man, it's fun. It's good stuff. Frank, let's move along here. We got some other things to talk about, not hockey related. Everything we missed, we'll recap next week when we actually start on time. There's plenty more free agent stuff to talk about. I'm excited to do so, but we got all summer to talk about this stuff because we're going to get pretty dry here pretty quickly. Now that Tarasenko signed, I can't even really think of anybody else. I'm super excited to hear where they land. You got one right off the bat for me? You have a list? Tyler
Johnson, James Van Riemsdyk.
Okay, Tyler Johnson, JVR, those types of guys will go to a good team. Antti Ranta's a big one. Antti Ranta's a big one. If the Devils didn't have Jake Allen, I would want him, but I'm cool with Allen Markstrom.
How about John Klingberg?
Yeah.
I like Klingberg.
I like him. I just don't think he moves the needle for anyone.
Jack Roslovic.
I mess with Roslovic as a bottom six player,
Daniel
but no, the people who are going to move the needle for someone are all signed already.
Yeah, basically.
Tyler Johnson and JVR, I think, will help a team's third or fourth line. But we'll see. The Blackhawks should sign them both and really make sure all those guys are playing in Rockford next year. Screw it. Put Bedard in Rockford, win the Calder Cup with ease, go 16-0 in the playoffs. I'm obviously joking. I don't even think that's Connor Bedard would request a trade if he ever had to get on a bus to Rockford. Yuck. Frank, let's send it over period 3.
Oh shit, VP.
I got you.
Oh, I mean that was crazy.
Very good, Frank. All right, we're off hockey for a little bit. Let's go 15 or so minutes quickly. Let's talk about Frank's video game corner. I know there's a lot coming out. What do you got for me? Because now that hockey is over and we're really fastly after I hear Kyle speak on Friday, we're gonna really start the dead zone, the snooze fest of the NHL offs.
We'll start cooking with some video games then. We could do it on the show and stuff like that. Really though, like during the summer, July's a tough month for video games. There's only one major game coming out this month. There a couple days ago, there was actually an outage on Xbox.
I
Microsoft
heard.
is still investigating what's going on there. I don't know if it was some hackers trying to take down Microsoft or whatever the case may be. But yeah, it was down for like 7+ hours. So if you had an Xbox and you were playing it, a lot of people weren't able to get online, which is kind of big news for a company of that caliber, like Microsoft, being down for that long. Like you hear of outages here and there, but to go 7 or more hours for one of the biggest gaming platforms in the world, it's big news right there. Star Wars Bounty Hunter, I've talked about it a couple times on this show. That comes out August 1st. It's going to be interesting to see a modern day game where you follow around Bounty Hunter Jango Fett. That'll be so much fun. That'll
It's
be
not
so
new.
much fun. Huh?
That's a remake.
Yeah, I know.
I can't.
But
I
it's a
played it.
modern day game of the like it's a to
Yes.
follow it. It'll be different. There'll be their differences, just like any
I can't
but it's
wait.
like
I
it's
can't
just gonna
wait.
be interesting to see. Like you get to follow around like a modern day video game where you follow around Jango Fett.
I can't
It's
wait.
gonna be crisp graphics, 4K, whatever the case may be. Like, yeah. But yes, it is a remake for those who didn't know. Bounty Hunter came out many years ago. But just to have like I love when games are remade like this.
Me too.
Speaking of that, I've just started playing the first Gears of War again.
Ah,
I want to run through all the Gears of War because Gears of War E-Day is coming out. I don't know if there's a release date on that. I'd have to double check. But E-Day, for those who don't know, is the day where it all began. It's a prequel to Gears of War 1. So I wanted to play through all the Gears again. And Gears of War 1 was actually remade in 2015, and it's on Game Pass for free at no additional cost. So I started that, and it's so crisp. What compared to like when you played the first Gears of War compared to the remake, it's beautiful. I love it, and I can't wait to see what a 2024 version of Bounty Hunter looks like. I think it's just going to be magnificent. Um, VP, if you are a fan of Agent Smith, if you know who that is from The Matrix, it's now a playable character in Multiverses. If you haven't tried out Multiverses yet, it's basically Super Smash Bros, but with characters from all over the freaking different universes, hence the name Multiverses. And not only do they add Agent Smith to their game, but there's a new spectator mode and free-for-all mode as well. And then I saved the biggest news for last, perhaps the news everybody's been waiting for. It's NCAA College Football 25 is a couple weeks away. It comes out the 19th. You could play early access for it if you pre-order it. I cannot wait to get my hands on this game. VP, who are you going to win a national championship with?
the Northern Illinois Huskies. I can't wait to go 18-0, or what would it be, 14-0 in 5 straight seasons. Finally, make it to the college football playoff and win it all. It's going to be great.
It's going to be great. Oh my God.
I plan on doing it with a couple smaller schools. Like I'll probably do it with like Alabama in year 1 just to be fun. But like I'll probably do it. I want to do it with NIU. I might pick up a couple of their closest foes in the MAC, Western Michigan, Toledo, some of the teams with my favorite jerseys in the MAC. The MAC is loaded with premium chef kiss jerseys in football. Some of the best helmets, like the Toledo Rockets helmets, are fucking awesome. I can't wait to play some action on the old PS5. I can't wait.
It's going to be so good. I can't wait.
It's gonna be
Literally, we're
great.
11 years in the making.
The world
NCAA
needed this to heal.
Oh yeah.
You had COVID and political debate and social justice. We all needed NCAA college football.
This
The
is a
world
long
will
time
get
coming.
back to good thanks to this game.
And it will continue. There will be a 26
Oh, yeah.
now that
Oh,
the
yeah.
the seal's broken and we got all the the legal stuff out of the way here. We're gonna be cooking. I'm gonna get the game, obviously. Feel like I have to get it day one. but I can't wait. Dynasty mode sounds sick. There's a dynasty mode in there. Travis says, my son and I have been playing The Forest, pretty heavy, older game, but really fun. Yeah, I'm familiar with The Forest. I've never played it, but I know what it's about. It's a survival type of game. I've heard good things about it. That's good. Travis, I'm glad you're gaming. Everybody should be gaming. There's a lot of good games out there. So yeah, that's what I got for you on Frank's Video Game Corner. A lot of good stuff. Kind of a dry month, but there's still a lot of news. So yeah.
Absolutely. Frank, in 10 seconds or less, say what you're watching this weekend.
House of Dragons, 100%. Been fantastic. And we're going to see a couple movies on our watching list this week. So we're going to see Maxine, which is a sequel to X. It is the third movie in the trilogy of X, Pearl, and now Maxine. And then we're going to go see a movie called Kinds of Kindness. So there's what we'll be watching this week.
Very good, Frank. Very good. For me, probably nothing.
Nothing.
Well, I'm caught up on the Alkalite. It's going to be a busy weekend. It's just a crazy weekend. But we'll see. We'll see. The White Sox, I guess, sometimes sports. But I'm excited for the Olympics in a couple weeks. That'll be fun.
I'll be watching that.
Yeah, same. I want to watch lots of swimming. I love watching the swimming competitions. It is always very, very fun. Frank, you know what time my brother Joey's been watching Breaking Bad. I just watched one of the best episodes of Breaking Bad of all time yesterday while waiting to watch The Alkalite because we had to wait for it to come out.
Yeah.
It came out at like 9 or whatever, so we were watching BB waiting for it. I might run just a couple random episodes of Breaking Bad, like the good ones. I mean, holy crap. It is awesome. I love Breaking Bad. It's one of the greatest shows of all time. Frank, let's end this bitch with America's favorite podcast segment of the week. Breaking Bets.
Where's my money, bitch?
Welcome to Breaking Bets, excuse me. Where's my money, bitch? Brought to you by Rabbit Gaming, your premier.
Not even ready.
Oh my God, Frank, get your shit together in this episode. Brought to you by Rabbit Gaming, your premier peer-to-peer marketplace. Check out what they are building over at rabbitgaming.com. Things are really spicing up over there. Everybody should go be a part of it. rabbitgaming.com. Frank, when Breaking Bad played yesterday and that theme song opened up the show, and it didn't say, where's my money, bitch, right at the end, I was a little thrown off a little bit. I hear our graphic every week, and then all of a sudden we hear it on the show yesterday, and it doesn't say it, and I'm like, oh yeah, we added that in.
It's funny.
It's a quote from the show. That's Jesse Pinkman saying it, but it's not in the main intro on the real show. All right, Frank, brought to you by Rabbit Gaming. Breaking Bets is up to you.
3 baseball picks this week. That's all we're really left with right now. We got the Cardinals and the Pirates playing tonight in Game 2. Miles Mikolas is on the mound for the Cardinals. In his last 2 starts, we've seen a lot of regression out of Mikolas. I think that's going to continue in Game 2 of this series after the Cardinals took Game 1. Jared Jones has been fairly consistent all year for the Pirates, and I like the value we're getting out of the Pirates at home coming off of a loss. The Pirates shouldn't have to score a ton of runs to get the win here, but they should be able to put up a fair amount against Mikolas and secure the win at home. Pittsburgh Pirates money line -125, bet to win 2 units. Tampa Bay Rays are playing the Kansas City Royals in Kansas City. Just like the Pirates, or just like the last Pirates pick, I like the Royals here to rebound after a loss to the Rays in game number 1. Before the loss to the Rays in game number 1, the Royals were hot. They won 4 out of their last 5, including taking 3 out of 4 over the AL Central rivals and leaders, the Cleveland Guardians. The Royals defense has been pretty good lately, and I think Waka and the rest of the defense can contain the Rays tonight and continue the heater that they have been on. Kansas City Royals money line -110, bet to win 2 units, which leads me to my last pick, where I went a bit rogue. Never gave a pick like this out on the podcast before. We got the Philadelphia Phillies and the Chicago Cubs. We got Zach Wheeler against Shota Imanaga. This will be the first time the Phillies lineup will be facing Imanaga. If a team like this is the first time you have to go against Imanaga. I feel like there's going to be some learning curves, at least one time through the order, which by that time you're roughly getting to the third inning, And 3 of Imanaga's last 4 games, he's given up 5 hits or less. Imanaga's last 2 outings haven't been the best, but he's due for a shutdown game, and I think this is the perfect spot for that to happen after his last 2 mediocre outings. So we're going to take Shota Imanaga under 5.5 hits allowed at -110. Bet to win 1 unit.
Very good, Frank. Very, very good. I hope you go 3-0 and finally get that shit over 50% for good.
Hey, we were over 50 for a while.
Yeah, and then you blew it. So we'll see
Not
how it
this week.
goes. We'll see how it goes. I can't thank everybody enough for watching today's episode. Sorry we were a little late today. Ran a little past when I thought it was going to be at the development camp. It's all Alec Martinez's fault. He had just had to call in on Zoom at 1:30.
Thanks, Alec.
Yeah, thank Alec. Very fun, though. Great day.
Keep saying Alec.
Huh?
I keep saying Alex. It's just natural.
It is what it is. All right, Frank. Great show. Thank you to everybody in the chat for watching. Thank you to everybody at home. Listen if you missed some of the episode on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, wherever you can find a podcast. And make sure you tune in next week at 2 p.m. Unless the world explodes. Then we won't have a show. I hate when the world explodes. Frank, I hope you have yourself a
4th of July also. I didn't know if you were going to mention it. I just wanted to get that in there.
Absolutely.
Continue, VP.
Is anybody watching this show watching their last episode of Bardown with all 10 fingers?
No, everybody will have 10 fingers come next
Make sure you have 10 fingers by the time you report back to Bardown next week, people.
And if you don't, out there, at least there's a good reason, maybe.
Exactly. Maybe you blew it off and the firework was extremely cool. I mean, that would be worth it. But yeah.
Be safe. Don't be stupid.
Yep. Enjoy 4th of July. Go have a good time with your friends and family, those you love most. And as always, think about your all-time favorite American players when thinking about 4th of July. For me, it's Zach Parise, Patrick Kane, Jack Hughes, Luke Hughes, Quinn Hughes. Shout out to all of them. And as always, thank you for listening.